Nordic Ashes Survivors of Ragnarok is a Norse-inspired roguelite survivor game similar in style to the popular games Vampire Survivors and Brotato, just to name a few. It recently launched its 1.0 version, which for those that don't know what that means, it's the version that officially marks the end of early access. Nordic Ashes has been in early access since 2022, and I'm coming into this with a fresh perspective since my first experience with the game is with this version. And hey, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button as I cover a lot of different indie content here on my channel. In Nordic Ashes, you will start off with a very small amount of content available to you. For those unaware of what this style of game entails, it basically tasks you with completing a run of an area where you'll receive upgrades and items available for that run, but also earn currency for permanent upgrades that carry over between runs. These types of games are meant to be highly replayable and provide a consistent sense of progression, which Nordic Ashes certainly delivers on that front. There are 9 total lands to play through with different difficulty levels, but you start with just one available land and one available character. This will initially make the game feel very narrow, but the core of it is in its progression. Successfully completing each land will unlock the next. There's a bunch of different characters to unlock through various means, tons of different relics and artifacts. Each land has new enemy types and multiple bosses to overcome in order to leave victorious. There's a wealth of content here that will no doubt keep you busy for a very, very long time. I mentioned this first because initially Nordic Ashes can feel a bit underwhelming. Besides the limited variety in the beginning, it also doesn't do a great job with its first-time user experience. You will receive some small bits and bobs of information to help you get started, but there's a lot here that isn't explained and is therefore easy to overlook or be confused by. A few immediate examples of this are the functions for each artifact, the purpose of Yggdrasil seeds, which is oh so important to becoming more powerful, and lastly, the level structure is pretty unclear as well. Artifacts are consumable one-time use items that you can pick up or purchase, and until you learn what they do or check their information in the glossary post-run, you'll have no clue what each one does the first time you grab it. Yggdrasil seeds are very important as they can be used to purchase permanent upgrades, but understanding that you need to manually convert these seeds to leaves is never mentioned. I overlooked this for my first 2 hours of gameplay before noticing a button to press in order to convert them. Lastly, the levels are decently sized areas you can traverse through. Eventually, you'll be greeted by a mini-boss, which then transports you to a small hub after defeating it. The same area again, another mini-boss, hub again, same area a third time, and then finally you'll be whisked away for the final boss of that area. For the first few hours I played, the flow of it felt a bit weird as you can be abruptly teleported away before the final boss, so you always feel like you're working within the constraints of an invisible clock. Or is it? Again, it felt like it was tied to time, but I believe it's tied to the amount of kills you earn to progress through the bar at the top of the screen. It's never fully explained. Things like this take some getting used to, and a small bit of information prior to your first run explaining the gameplay loop would have went a long way in tempering my initial confusions. These are important things to consider because these small issues might be enough to turn off first-time players. If you've played a game in this style before, you'll most likely have minimal issues with getting a proper grasp on its mechanics, but a bit more front-end information would be helpful to ease the player in. I specifically wanted to mention those issues first, since they are what you encounter right in the beginning when you start playing. So with all of that out of the way, once I got into it and really sunk my teeth in, I was hooked. Nordic Ashes is, for me, my favorite game in this style that I've played so far. The main reason for this is because of how much more active I needed to be. In Vampire Survivors, for example, I often felt like there was little incentive to move around and was often powerful enough to just stand there and my character would auto-kill everything within my range. In Nordic Ashes, it does auto attack, and there are times when you'll stand around idle, but you can also manually aim the direction of your attacks if you desire, and there's a lot of incentive to travel around to collect things. You can also dodge dash, which gives some added mobility. Each character has an ultimate attack, which proper usage is crucial to surviving at times. There's artifacts you can use in a pinch to do things like heal, attract nearby coins, or shoot fireballs, just to name a few. There's a lot going on from a gameplay perspective that kept me engaged while playing versus just focusing on my build and going AFK like some of the other games I've played. Moving around the map, you'll find obelisks, which are temporary buffs. There's different relic shrines, which have random requirements to acquire their goods, and you can collect some cash at a gold mine. Besides upgrading your current weapons and your skill tree, you can also ascend your weapons to give them more powerful abilities by earning ascension crystals. There is so much to acquire and upgrade that you'll always have something new to tinker with. Some of these things might not be available at the start, and how many there are is dependent on what you've unlocked in the Yggdrasil tree, or meeting certain achievement requirements, but that just adds to the feeling of wanting to play just one more run. Okay, one more run. It just keeps going till suddenly you realize a few hours have gone by. The Yggdrasil tree is where you'll spend your leaves to unlock permanent upgrades, and this can really be used to cater the experience to your tastes. So many different upgrades with 4 different focus areas like healing, combat, structures, and exploration. Each one has multi-level upgrades and branching paths, but that's not the only way to gain more powerful permanently. Using a character will earn them mastery XP, which can then be used for their own individual skill tree. Every character has different skins to unlock upon meeting certain requirements. There's extra modes like a daily challenge option, Ragnarok and Nightmare modes, custom, and that's all on top of the 3 difficulties of normal, hard, and expert for the adventure mode. The daily challenges are really fun since they feel drastically different than the adventure mode and force you to try playing differently than you would in adventure mode. Completing them rewards you with some extra seeds and gold medals, which can be spent to unlock exclusive gold skins for your unlocked characters. If you're the competitive type, the daily challenges also have leaderboards, so you can try to claim one of the top spots. I think you probably get the point by now, but there's so much to experiment with and to test yourself. I found moving up to the expert mode to be really enjoyable as it challenges not just your gameplay mechanics, but also your ability to put together a good build. The enemies are more difficult, the level traps more deadly, but along with a greater challenge comes a greater reward. All of the bosses were really fun to battle, and the higher the difficulty level, the more complexity there is to these fights. It's just this non-stop sense of growth and progression that keeps its hooks in you and doesn't let go. It's a game that focuses all of its efforts on the gameplay, as it lacks any sort of story or narrative, but it's all the better for it. Each level has colorful art and appropriate music, feels fun and different enough from the last so it did never feel repetitive. I simply cannot recommend this game enough for players that enjoy this style. If the developers can button up the first-time user experience a bit to make it more accessible to new players that haven't played any prior titles in this genre, they can have a real masterpiece on their hands. But even with the issues I mentioned, pick this one up and prepare to lose a lot of hours into unlocking all of its content, trying its different characters, and earning all of its various upgrades to work towards being a Nordic Ashes master. If you're new to this style of game, I would definitely still recommend it, and the information I've provided in this review covers a bit of its cryptic nuances, but just be aware you might need to seek some outside assistance to understand it fully. A special thank you to my buddy Eddie for sending me a copy of the game. It's thanks to him that I even found out about it, and hopefully if you're just finding out about it too, that you enjoy it as much as I do. I appreciate you watching this review and hope you found it helpful. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, comment below if you have any questions, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. But until next time, have a good one.